One.
Good morning. Glad that you're joining us for another edition of Latino Paradox. I want to thank those of you who watched us live at Fresno event. It was great. Hope to do more of those as time goes on. This week, very active week. The biggest thing, in our opinion, was the president's speech to the United Nations. A great deal of controversy erupted from that, and the response from North Korea was unbelievable, let's say, in the last 30 to 40 years, the threat of a hydrogen bomb being unleashed in the Pacific. There was discussion about Iran, references to Cuba and to Venezuela. So this week, foreign relations. So in regards to our three questions, the first question being, who are we as Latinos in the context of this foreign affairs speech by the President of the United States? Ruben, what do you think?
So Arnold, what this tells us about who we are, it reminds us once again that we are, as we've said before, very patriotic people. We over-index in terms of participation in the military, and we always have. It's been the on-ramp for multiple generations of Latinos to get into other facets of American society and to advance. And so we're very patriotic. We understand that it's a difficult and dangerous world because we've learned that lesson in the past. And we appreciate blunt talk on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's also true that there are elements of our community that get nervous with this sort of tenor of discussion, as well we should, because this kind of tweet storm that's erupted between President Trump and Korean dictator Kim Jong-un is not helpful. So what can we say? It's a dangerous world. Latinos know it's a dangerous world. They've seen it firsthand, but they don't really appreciate efforts by this president to make it more dangerous.
I think what it says is that we are a population that will have to be on the front line disproportionately, as we've always been, if we go into any kind of military exercise. It says that we will unfortunately pay a price for that, as many other people do, but we have always paid that price disproportionately because of our population's representation in our armed forces. And regrettably, we will not be treated in the manner that we have given to this country. And it's very, very unfortunate. And it's also becoming a very, very big reality about our skepticism and our suspicion about what this president says and does for the reasons that you've expressed. I think there's a growing suspect, or there's a growing concern with anything he says about foreign relations, because he seems to make things worse than better. Our next question is, what do we want, Ruben? What do we want from the 45th President of the United States when it comes to foreign affairs?
I think a bigger question is, what do we want from foreign affairs generally and our place in the world? And I think what we want is to live in a peaceful world with as few number of conflicts as possible. We don't want to see innocent human life threatened. We don't want to see situations where countries implode and refugees have to flood out. The compassionate part of Latinos understands that those are not things we want to see more of, that we want to live in a world where there's less of those things. But we also want some degree of security that comes from having a strong military presence. And I think we're sort of persuaded that if you don't fight, for instance, terrorists in Afghanistan or Iraq, you end up finding them in your backyard in San Bernardino.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that, Ruben. I think that there's certainly that element in our community that wants everything that you've said, but I think what they want is a great deal more common sense and a lot less bluster. I think that they recognize the phenomenal power this country has, but let's face it, we bragged about what we were going to do in Afghanistan, and we're still there, and we might end up having to go back. So we do a lot of talking, and we have not been able to produce that in a manner that is consistent with our image of World War I and World War II. Not even Vietnam satisfied that image that we could basically take care of business and come home within a short period of time. So I think what we want is a growing expectation is a little bit more class, a little bit more diplomacy, and really recognizing that our words are very, very important, because some parts of this world do not fear us the way we were once feared, and they're willing to throw everything into the kitchen sink. I think we're becoming aware of that, and we want that to stop, and we're very concerned that that may not be a bridge that is as far as some of us have thought it would be. So it's very important.
Your point there brings up a question about what we want versus what we can have. And, you know, the idea that if we want a safe world, if we leave these evildoers alone, they'll leave us alone. That's a fool's bargain. We learned on 9/11 that isn't the case. And the big
but I don't think that's what we want. I think
the big takeaway on 9/11 was just because you don't know that you're at war and there hasn't been a formal declaration in Congress doesn't mean somebody hasn't already declared war on you.
I agree, but that's the point. The point is that we have to recognize that we're not as feared as we once were. So how we go about dealing with people is got to be a different way. That doesn't mean that we're always giving bread, that we're always giving a handout. What it means is that we have to be cognizant of the threats that are with us and how we deal with those threats. We can't deal with them in such a legitimate, in such an honest way as we once used to, and so deliberately.
Here's the problem. Here's the problem with your analysis. You put 100% of the responsibility on the United States and on the United States president. You have, in this case, in real time, a Korean dictator who has said he wants to detonate a hydrogen bomb in the Pacific Ocean. Try as you might, you cannot blame that development on President Trump or any president. So my problem is you think that the entire world picture depends on how we react to things. We need to do this. We need to do that. If you listen back and play the tape, you've said the word we 1,000 times. There are going to be people like Kim Jong-un who do things like detonate a hydrogen bomb in the Pacific Ocean and spread radiation throughout many of our allies and threaten cities like Seattle, San Francisco, and Los Angeles and San Diego, things that are beyond our control, where we are in the reactive stage as opposed to we have total control. It sounds really arrogant to think somehow that we control the world. There are madmen out there, evildoers, people who want to kill us, people who want to do harm that we can't control.
Yeah, Ruben, but contrary to this scenario and this profile you want to keep painting about woe is me, that we're not always to blame, we have created situations in this world in which we're paying the consequence for today. So we have a responsibility. We are the greatest superpower on the earth. We constantly are saying that, and we're constantly letting everybody know that. And this president is constantly throwing that in everybody's face, including before the United Nations. So this isn't about me expecting the United States to take all the responsibility and all the blame. We go around acting like that. We have for the last 100 years in this world. And as a consequence, there are consequences. And we have to be cognizant of those consequences. We have to recognize that sometimes we have to be very, very careful to not move them in a direction that is becoming more of a threat. You're not going to tell me, and I'm not going to believe that this little short guy out of North Korea would be taking the attitude that he does today if our president wasn't turning around and picándole. This is a game that this president seems to play. He throws out words as if somebody's going to be really afraid. It reminds me of that guy in the school that talks a real bad game and doesn't expect somebody to get back at him in one form or another, and all later on somebody gangs up on him. So that's what I'm saying.
We're going long in this segment. We've got to wrap it up, but that goes to that point again. Again, it's always about Trump. The fact is that Kim Jong-un and that family in North Korea has been on the march to this moment in time to having a nuclear weapon and using it against people that it decides are its enemies since Bill Clinton was president. And he cut a deal with North Korea to give them tons of economic aid, which then freed up money to dedicate it to their nuclear program. So this idea somehow, President Trump's been president for 6 minutes by comparison to the long march that this foreign leader has been on. So I think that's our mistake.
And in those 6 minutes, Ruben, he's made things even worse. Because the reality is that he came in with a sanctions package at the end that makes a lot of sense. The sanctions package that the United Nations passed the other day against North Korea made a great deal of sense. Yeah. We should have gone to that point as soon as the President of the United States came into the presidency.
There's no argument there.
It sounds that said, okay, you are now deviating in a positive way. You are moving in the best direction possible, because that was the right message.
The tweets make things worse.
To get China and Russia to turn around and be much more supportive of this agenda, which is, in fact, an agenda that could annihilate all of the world.
So I agree.
Everybody's losing.
I agree with you, and I said at the beginning that Trump makes things worse through his tweets and the like. This sounds, though, an awful lot like folks on the left who blame Trump for racism. After Charlottesville and after the incident with the Klan, suddenly, according to the commentators, we had no racism in America until Donald Trump got elected president, which is BS. Likewise, things are happening around the world that have been spinning out of control for decades, that even though it's convenient for the left to blame on Trump, he hasn't made the situation better. He's made it worse. But let's not kid ourselves as to the designs of foreign leaders on their plans, the fact that they wanted this and the fact they've been working toward this, no matter who the U.S. president was.
Well, as much as I would like to continue this debate, we're going to draw a conclusion to it. We hope you've liked it. We hope you'll tune in next week. And we hope that Latino Paradox will continue to be of interest to all of you. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you.